Jixiang, and auspicious greetings to all members of the YAD in North America. It is a pleasure for me to take part in this English session with you guys. Starting from this week, we will have a series of 6 articles selected from Venerable Master's works. And what I will do is to guide you through these readings and also leave some time and space for you to discuss among yourselves. We hope that in this very difficult and crucial moment, we will be able to be guided by the Dharma as well as be blessed by the Buddha. This week's reading is Being a Global Citizen, selected from Dharma Words by Venerable Master Hsing Yun. Although the article we're about to read is not collected in the book shown on the screen, but it's just to give you an idea of the similar articles that you can find in the future when you need guidance and Dharma. So let's begin reading the article. Being a Global Citizen, Dharma Words by Venerable Master Hsing Yun. The swift evolution of transportation and information technology has bridged the divide between nations and people. Close friends may be separated by distance, but our hearts have never been closer. As the world becomes a global village, so in turn do we become global citizens, learning to coexist together. So what defines us as global citizens? Number 1, when we treat one another with equality. There is a Buddhist saying, "May the Buddha's hands reach down to smooth the hearts of all." A global citizen respects and cares for all without discrimination. A global citizen treats people of all races with equality instead of bias. A global citizen befriends every nation in his world, big and small, strong and weak. A global citizen realizes the relational interdependence between one another. Only by maintaining close bonds with the rest of the world can one be a citizen of equality. Number 2, when we learn to coexist as one. No man is an island. No one is self-sufficient. Everyone relies on others. We depend on society to live our daily lives. We depend on doctors to stay healthy. We depend on teachers for knowledge. When we travel abroad, we depend on aircrafts to bring us to our destinations. In light of this, a bigger heart and greater virtue enables us to realize our interdependence, to offer a helping hand to one another, and to show our mutual gratitude if we wish to coexist as one. Number 3, when we respect one another. Human beings may be categorized by gender, age, wealth, nobility, race, skin color, or character. But we all share the same human nature, and everyone deserves respect. We must put ourselves in others' shoes and think from their perspective. If we wish to be respected by others, we must first respect others. Respect their lives, privacy, and integrity. Respect their possessions. Respect their names and identities. As the saying goes, he who respects others will be respected by them. He who loves all will be loved by all. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Number 4, when we accept and embrace all people. Victor Hugo once said, "There is one spectacle grander than the sea. That is the sky. There is one spectacle grander than the sky. That is the interior of the soul." The world we live in is blessed with a diversity of customs, cultures, languages, and mentalities. Such diversity has made this world remarkable and beautiful. Therefore, if we wish to be part of this world, being open-minded is most important. The bigger your heart, the bigger your world. As we remember that this world belongs to every living being, not to any single individual, let acceptance be the gateway to harmony, so we too can blend in with this world. In conclusion, what defines us as global citizens? Number 1, when we treat one another with equality. Number 2, when we learn to coexist as one. Number 3, when we respect one another. Number 4, when we accept and embrace all people. So having read the article, what I will do now is to walk you through some of the main points in the article, and so that you can see that this small piece of work by the Venerable Master can actually be multidimensional. You will discover some major theories of the Dharma that will sustain us through our lives, and it will become very useful when we come across problems. And let's look at the first paragraph, which is in the introduction. Okay. And so we are looking at the point where Venerable Master mentions the importance of being global citizens. And there's actually a key word in this very first paragraph, which we read as the most fundamental teaching of the Dharma, which is dependent origination. Okay. And what is really bringing us together? Is it technology? Is it our hearts? That's what he mentions over here. And we can say that it's actually both. We have to depend on the conventional matters in this world that keep us together. But at the same time, what brings us tightly tied or bonded together becomes our heart, or in Dharma, 2 words, connection and interconnectedness. And so this brings us to the fundamental teaching of dependent origination, which in Sanskrit is actually pratitya samuppada. Okay. Dependent co-arising or dependent origination. And broken down into 2, pratitya means having relied on, or having met, or having followed along. So we have 3 keywords: rely on, meeting, along. While samupada means arises. In other words, this means that everything arises depending on multiple causes and conditions. Once these causes and conditions disperse, and then the thing will cease to exist. For example, if we look at a camera tripod, any leg missing will cause the stand to collapse, as they must rely on and depend on one another. And so this is the idea, pratitya, having relied on, and then arising means one thing leads to another, and another, and another. So one cause, relying on the proper conditions, becomes an effect. And this arising effect then becomes another cause that creates the arising for another thing, and so on. So this is what pratitya samuppada basically means. And we must come into this article through this idea, because understanding the intricate web of interconnectedness helps us see how the world becomes smaller and closer. And so what does dependent origination have to do with being a global citizen? If we look at the basic meaning of global, global means relating to or involving the entire world. So this is how we as earthlings exist. So in simple words by the Venerable Master, coexistence means existing together, while together means in contact or in connection or in union. And so to exist together means you cannot be away from the contact or the connections of one another. That is why he mentions in the opening of the article that we have to stay closer together. We are tightly bonded together, and we depend on one another. If we don't realize this, there's no way for us to exist. Okay. Now, let's move on to the first point of what actually defines us as a global citizen. Okay, so the first sentence opens with, "May the Buddha's hand reach down to smooth the hearts of all." Okay. We're looking at this particular definition because what he means is the Buddha's universal compassion and unconditional kindness. Only with a sense of equality and kindness that you regard all living beings as the same will you be able to really smooth out or to soothe their hearts. So you would imagine this is when the Buddha's large and warm hands is placed over your heart. Right? You feel soothed, you feel comfortable, and you feel that the Buddha's heart or the Buddha's hand has actually really cleansed out any sense of affliction or worries that would exist in your hands. So this is what the first sentence means, that he's there to even out sentient beings' tendency to see things as different or to put things on opposite ends, which is what we do all the time. For example, you and I, good or bad, birth and death, happiness and sadness. So these types of dualism are what exactly causes us to be unhappy, to be dissatisfied, or in other words, to suffer. And therefore, when our mind is even without such bumps of discrimination, then anything that comes across the heart can be even and fair. And now, a global citizen needs to respect a couple of things. So basically what the Venerable Master wants us to realize here is that we are all sentient beings who possess the same Buddha nature. And by the same Buddha nature, it means we all have that same potential to attain Buddhahood. And Buddhahood means our ability to awaken to the truth, for example, coexistence, and the fact that we can really see beyond the surface of things and regain a peaceful mind without being led by what happens on the outside. That's the first thing. And secondly, by the saying that we all possess the same Buddha nature means that we have the ability to look at this world with compassion. That willingness to relieve other beings from suffering as we do the same for ourselves. And at the same time, you start to look at things from a very different perspective, which is represented by the word prajna, or insight. Okay, we see that process in the Heart Sutra, which we may have a chance to discuss in the future. And so that is why with compassion, with the ability to really treat one another the same with compassion and insight, means that colors, geography, languages, traditions are conventional names for our existence. Okay? While the names may be different, but we rely on these conventional names to live for one shared and common purpose among all living beings. That is, we all want to live well. I want to live well, you want to live well. And so just because I want to live well doesn't mean that you should sacrifice your chance to also do the same. And that is how respect arises. So in other words, we are pretty much all on the same boat. If you keep kicking people off the boat, then eventually this boat will lose support and it will sink too, because life itself is an accumulation of conditions. So you would imagine yourself as a boat that is being held together by the glue, the wood, and the many technology, while water is the conditions provided by this world and all other sentient beings. Try taking any of these elements away, then you will not exist. And so for this reason, we must realize that in the big picture of life, we can each play a role to keep this world moving. And seeing anyone as lower or lesser only cripples your own ability to walk with all legs or to row with all hands. As for the second point, Now, looking at the idea of coexistence. So Venerable Master leads us into a quote by saying that no man's an island. And so by saying no one is self-sufficient, it means you can't provide for yourself in all aspects. There could be one or two things you do well, but you can't cover every aspect. Therefore, you have to rely on what others do well in order to provide for you. This is what we mean by dependence. And so you would imagine in the whole big picture of life, each one of us is a dot. And when connected with others, we create lines. And when lines intercept and overlap, it creates a total surface. Therefore, the true phase of existence. Right? You can't call a dot the entirety of existence. And so that being said, you can try completing a painting with just dots. You would imagine how hard and tedious that process will be. But eventually, when you see the benefit of relying on the powers of connecting with others and the support created by other people, then coexistence becomes much more important. Just as said above, the existence of a camera tripod needs the support of all three legs leaning into each other. Try taking one away, and then the camera or the stand will actually collapse. And so having said that, Venerable Master in point 2 says, a bigger heart and a greater virtue enables us to realize our interdependence, to offer a helping hand to one another. So this is what's happening around the world right now. We see that over 200 labs around the world are sharing data and information with each other so that they can speed up the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. So this is the case when we see that it is not a race against each other. It is a task that requires all hands on board. So think about it, which is better? One winner who takes 5 years to develop the vaccine, to make a big name out of himself, earn a lot of money, or many winners who share the glory in relieving the world from this pandemic within 5 months. You do the calculation. It's nice and simple. Okay, number 3. The key word in this point is respect. Okay, as has been said in the article, everyone deserves respect. And when Venerable Master refers to the comment of 皆大欢喜, or translated into English as win-win, it means what you truly want and need shouldn't get in the way of what others truly want and need too. Just because you wish to enjoy sunlight doesn't mean that others have to stay in the dark. True respect comes from a sense of equality or respect for all living beings. So that is why at the last sentence in this paragraph, where Venerable Master uses that quote, he who respects others will be respected by them. He who loves all will be loved by all. Okay, we can take a little time to talk about the word respect from the Buddhist perspective. Okay. So a basic understanding of respect is that you show regard and recognition of the value of others. But the Buddhist teaching of respect comes in 3 matters. First of all, you need to learn to respect yourself. Okay, so as human beings, it is perfectly fine for you to have desire to want to live well. Otherwise, we don't know how else to exist because we're not yet Buddhas. And so respect your desire, and that ability to find true happiness becomes a great cause for you to actually seek the right skill and wisdom to achieve that goal. And secondly, the Buddhist teaching of respect requires us to respect the truth. Okay, in this case, we're referring to the law of causality, or dependent origination, or 缘起, because this truth will guide you to live a better life. And number 3, the Buddhist teaching of respect asks us to respect others for 2 reasons. First of all, it is important for us to respect those who are ahead of us on the path of Buddhahood. Right? So they would have traveled the path, they have more experience, they know what else to do. So they can be there as what we call Kalyana Mitras, or virtuous companies who can take you along this path. Therefore, you are never alone. And they too can share insights or skills that help you proceed further down this road. And the second reason that we should respect others is in cases when you are coming across people who may not have been ahead of you. But think about it. Should these people be considered as less well-skilled, less intelligent than you? This is important in the case when we learn the truth of dependent origination, the fact that we all rely on each other to exist. So this would be time that we need to realize even unawakened people may have valuable tips or knowledges of the truth that could help you realize the greater picture. Okay. So what may look like an unlikely cause, in Chinese that is 恶缘, for your enlightenment can in fact be a true assistive condition, 助缘. And so this is what we mean by 逆增上缘, or the reversely assistive condition, something that you find unfavorable, something you don't like, something that causes you to suffer, but in the end actually enables you to grow spiritually and mentally, and it actually makes you stronger. And so perhaps the most delicate skill with regard to respect is learning how to balance all three aspects of respect. Respect for yourself, respect for the truth, and respect for the insight of others. Okay, this balance is essential to any skill. If you want to be a potter, for example, you have to learn not only from your teacher, but also from your own actions and powers of observation, and even from the clay itself. Then you have to weigh all of these factors together to achieve mastery on your own. If, in your pursuit of the Buddhist path, your self-respect outweighs your respect for the truth of causality or the insight of others, you will find it hard to take criticism or to laugh at your own foolishness. This will make it impossible for you to learn. If, on the other hand, your respect for your teacher outweighs your self-respect or your respect for the truth, you can open yourself to these endless possibilities and close yourself to the truth that the canon says is to be seen by the wise for themselves. And so this is how we can see the whole idea of respect within this article. And now, number 4. Right? When we all accept and embrace all people. Right? This is a very beautiful quote. Right? There's one spectacle grander than the sea, that is the sky. There's one spectacle grander than the sky, that is the interior of the soul. And by soul, we don't refer to that Christian, everlasting entity, but by soul, we are looking at your mentality, your principle, your attitude, which are what sustains you throughout the ups and downs of life. Right? And so that soul sometimes is expressed in the forms of language, customs, and, for example, cultures. And these are actually what makes the world beautiful. So in the closing article by Venerable Master, he reminds us of the importance of being open-minded. Okay? The bigger your heart, the bigger your world. And I actually remember an incident that after becoming a monastic, I went to the Venerable Master and said to him, "Look, Venerable Master, now that I'm a Buddhist nun, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to learn this, and I want to learn that, so I can become a better monastic in terms of my personal cultivation, as well as in terms of being a Dharma propagator." And so having listened to my comments, Venerable Master silently and quietly turned to me and says, "Remember, you're a part of the Sangha now. There's no I in we." Right? So being a part of a team is very different from being just a soul singer or a soul player. Right? So when he says the bigger your heart, the bigger your world, right? It allows you to recognize the existence of all other individuals who share the same big picture of you. And there are endless benefits to seeing yourself as a part of the whole. For example, when you accept yourself as a part of the team, you find it easier to let go of your ego. In other words, self-attachment. There is a saying that success for all is better than success for the self only. 成功不必在我. And only by letting go of your ego will you be able to see this. And the second benefit of being able to see oneself as a part of the whole picture is that one way or the other, right, life is a heavy burden. You come across a lot of tasks that are very difficult, and sometimes you burn out. Sometimes you feel exhausted. But being able to be a part of the team, suddenly you realize the load is actually shared by many people. For example, the load of a family is shared by your family. The load of a task is shared by your team members at work. So you don't have to do everything. Otherwise, it would take forever and you would get nowhere. And so when the load is shared by all, and you realize that we all can play a part. It's just like being in a basketball game, or when you're in a rowing competition. The load lessens. Or even in Animal Crossing, right? When you want to catch that big fish or the big spider that is very difficult to find, then suddenly a friend comes along and goes, hey, I have one for you, right? You probably save 2 hours. And so that's one good thing about being a part of the whole picture. And the third benefit is that you now have the chance to help others succeed too. Right? Being a whole part of the picture means you help one another. But sometimes the greatest achievement comes from the ability to help not just yourself, but others achieve. Okay. Recently, I shared my reading of David Brooks' The Second Mountain. And it was actually quite inspiring because in the book it basically tells you that in the first mountain of your life that you need to climb, right? It is the mountain of success, self-recognition, and self-definition. But as you achieve all of this, then you realize on the peak of this first mountain, there's another one that you need to climb. And the second mountain becomes even more important and even more self-fulfilling because it represents the moment when you need to use your ability to help others succeed. And so the Buddhist teaching of coexistence allows us to let go of the ego, rely on each other, benefit from one another, but most importantly, as you grow to become a stronger person, you can use your sense of respect and your equality, as well as your insight to really help others. And so this becomes a wonderful meaning of respect and coexistence. Okay, so I hope basically going through these points, you now have a better idea of what Venerable Master Hsing Yun wants to tell you through the 4 ways of achieving peaceful or harmonious coexistence. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to hop onto a few questions that you can discuss among yourself. And so when I show a question, you can click on pause, and then via a webinar, you can discuss these questions, share your thoughts with one another, or even record your own answer, or write down the comments at the bottom of this video. And so in the future, those who hop onto this video can also learn something from your insight. Okay, so first discussion question. Okay, having read Being a Global Citizen, question 1. Can you give an example to how you may treat your family, your friend, your colleagues, your YAD members, or even strangers with equality? Discussion question 2. What bonds do you think you should make with those who coexist with you? For example, bonds of affection, love, or wisdom. Why? Just click on pause, have a few discussion. Question 3. Name the person whom you respect the most in life and tell us why. Question 4. In what way can we accept and embrace all people who cross paths with us? Now, having discussed the above questions, I hope you have gained some insights from one another or from the venerables who is nearest to you. But what do you have other questions for yourself or for others? Okay, this is a moment when you can use the message function to share your question with one another, maybe to gain insight from one another. All right. And so having discussed and shared these questions, I hope that you have gained multiple dimensional understanding from this article, Being a Global Citizen by Venerable Master Hsing Yun. Okay. And so thank you very much for today's session. It's been fun and wonderful for me. I hope it's the same for you. And so let's close by doing a dedication of merits among you all. So please join your palms. Dedication of merits. May kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May Chan, Pure Land, and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows. Let us dedicate the joy and wisdom we have gained from this session to our loved ones, to our dear Venerable Master for good health, for all of our friends and colleagues, and for all those in the world who are now fighting the battle together as one through the COVID-19 pandemic. May we remain compassionate and insightful as Buddhists. Thank you very much. 阿弥陀佛。